What is the richest place on earth? It's the cemetery. Why? Because there lies where most dreams go. And what prevents people from living out their precious dreams? What gets in the way? Fear. And what's so crazy is they're not even real fears. This is Tara Sage Steves of Create Your Life and CreateYourLifeInc.com, and that's what I want to talk to you about today. Fear. Because either you are actively pursuing and living out your dreams and making the impact you want to make in the world, or you are waiting to feel ready, waiting for later, when circumstances are just right, waiting for the someday that never comes. However unintentionally, you are setting your dreams up to die, to wind up in the cemetery, right along with all the others. Here are two fear acronyms that speak to these two distinct paths. One is forget everything and run. The other, face everything and rise. Now, forget everything and run is the fight or flight instinct at work. And by all means, if you are being chased by a tiger, run. Certainly, not all fear is bad or counterproductive. We can agree on that for sure. Fear can, and it does, serve in many ways. But in many other ways, fear is a dream killer. Fear is a potential snatcher. It's a thief. All too often, fear undermines and slows down your success. I work really hard at really overcoming my fear. We often have to make a decision that we've got to rise above fear. Have you ever had a moment where you needed to say, enough is enough, I am bigger than this? Let's make that moment happen together right now. Because the key is in the ability to know the difference, to discern fear. When you successfully learn how to do this, you become a force, a quick manifester, a magnet for opportunities. And it really boils down to answering this key question in response to your fear. Is it time to run, or is it time to expand? Is it time to run, or is it time to expand? So my focus and intention in connecting with you here is to create a transformation and stretch beyond any ways that fear isn't serving you well. Here's an important statistic. According to the American Psychological Association, 95% of people do not take action on their dreams because of fear. And 98% of the fear is unfounded. 98%. Something to know about me is I love to make up words, and I want to share one of my favorites with you. Fauxbias. So I'm spelling it a little different. F-A-U-X. Bia. Faux as in fake. A fake fear. A fake fear, or unfounded fear, they're what prevent 98% of the 95% of people who do not move their dreams into action. So in other words, 95% of people use rationality to support inaction and belief in limitation. 95% of people. Now, why does this matter? Well, it matters a lot, both on an individual scale and on a global level. Now, I'll be sharing more with you in a moment about the fear domino effect. But back to that statistic for a moment. Fake fears, or unfounded fears, are what prevent 98% of the 95% of people who do not move their dreams into action. Meaning 95% of people use rationality to support inaction and belief in limitation. So in other words, the beliefs that are holding you back, the ones that are generating that fear, are made up. But rather than change or question phobias, what's commonly done instead by 95% of people is finding all kinds of practical, rational reasons not to act. So I want to pause here for a moment and invite you to notice, ideally even jot down, one or two things that you identify or even just suspect to be a phobia in your life. Where is fear slowing down your success? Writing it down is an important step because when you name it, you frame it. So there's power in capturing it in words and writing it down. Then from there, it's about moving through what I've coined and call the freedom from phobias process. So hopefully you're writing. My goal in sharing this with you is twofold, okay? Number one is to inform you and introduce you to a proven psychological process to support you in going beyond fear, be it fear of public speaking, fear of being seen, fear of being judged by others, fear of stepping up as a leader, fear of launching that business, fear of going on that trip, fear of walking into that networking event. Whatever it is that's slowing down the actions that lead to success, this proven psychological process can support you. And second, my heartfelt wish and my deepest intention and commitment to all who are served by Create Your Life is to be in service in a way that will effectively help you to become part of that exceptional 5% of people that do not let fear slow them down. So if you haven't already, take a moment now to jot down, say 3 specific areas of your life where you recognize that fear is keeping you playing small, where you are hesitating or stopping short of doing what you know would ultimately serve you. So for example, are you hesitating or avoiding opportunities to speak up and let your voice and your message be heard in a bigger, bolder way? Are you playing it safe, doing what's familiar over what's effective? Are you buying into the stories that you don't have enough or you don't know enough? Are your deepest dreams buried so deep that you've convinced yourself that they're too big, too unrealistic, maybe even impossible, that they're all just a big pipe dream? Are your deepest dreams and desires burning within you? And yet, despite the wisdom of your heart crying out, it just never feels like the right time to really go for it. So you default to telling yourself later or someday. But ultimately, what you're doing is putting your dreams on course to wind up in the cemetery, along with all the other dreams that are buried there. Are you ready to do what's required and be exceptional, to take a stand for your potentials, and to step up to the plate of becoming the best and brightest version of you? If so, you are in the right place. So now it's time to fully engage in this process as a gift you give yourself. Devoting this right now moment to shine a great big light and pinpoint for yourself those areas of your life where fear is keeping you playing small. Okay, so now let's take this one step further. I challenge you to be courageous in this right now moment, to step up and speak out. I challenge you to allow this right now moment to be an opportunity to share something that you wrote down. Stay with me. Share it in the comments below. By shining a light on your fear and letting it be seen, first by you and then by others, you are demonstrating that you will no longer allow it to lurk in the shadows and have a secret influence over you. By bringing it to light and sharing it, you take back your power by shifting the pattern. You stop the feelings of secret shame from feeding on themselves. You break the pattern of continuing to hide out and keep playing small. Take back the reins. By doing this, you are enacting a very powerful step toward being a bigger, braver, more empowered, and mission-driven version of you. So if you're accepting this challenge and you are taking this action, congratulations. You are already showing up braver than most. Here's one key, a key piece of how the 5% speak and think differently than the 95%. First, please don't be fooled into thinking these 5% do not have fear. I assure you, they do. They have fear just like we all have fear. Fear is a universal part of being human. But what they do have is they've learned how to powerfully manage their fear. They have it, but they refuse to let fear slow them down. And since fear is universal, this message can universally serve. So I can't in good conscience sit on this information. It must be shared. So to know it and keep it secret would be unethical at best. Imagine a world of people who know how to prevent fear from slowing down their success and their contributions to others. Just imagine the positive ripple effect and impact that would have on our world. Okay, so there's one word that ultimately sets the 5% of folks apart from the 95% who don't move their dreams into action. And this one word can have a tremendously profound and powerful impact on your life too. The word is despite. Those who regularly and persistently take consistent, relentless action despite their fears are the ones who live their potential, are the ones whose dreams are realized, and are the ones who have the level of impact and service and contribution. They're also the ones who are energetically sustained and inspired by the profound sense of satisfaction that comes from living out their dreams and being in high service and always moving toward their purpose and the fullest expression of who they are capable of being. These folks are the ones who show up despite all the what ifs, despite their fear and questions, despite the opinions of others, despite limited time or money or support, despite the insecurities and the wonderings about if they know enough or if they really have what it takes, or if they'll fail. Despite whatever circumstances or obstacles seem to be in their way, they show up despite FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. Despite all that, they decide that they are going to take action and live from a belief in possibility. Even if it's only 1% possible. They know that even just 1% possible means that it ceases to be impossible. They don't allow fear to sabotage their dreams. They refuse to allow fear and the unknowns to stifle their voice and the wisdom of what their heart and soul is calling for them to do, despite. A very powerful word, a game changer for those who are defiant enough to be in action despite whatever obstacles or circumstances appear to be in their way or are less than ideal. But here's the thing, here's where things get really tricky. It's what I refer to as the fear domino effect. Fear can create a domino effect of unwanted outcomes, often without you even being aware that it's happening. Here's a glimpse at the fear domino effect. Fear leads to inaction, and inaction leads to essentially feeling really crummy. Right? As you can see, I'm using very technical language here, but that's essentially how it works. Fear leading to inaction, and then inaction leading to feeling really crummy. Now, to get even more specific, fear can lead to procrastination, to avoidance, to missing that meeting or phone call, not following through on a task, rationalizing why things are good enough or why the timing is wrong, being immobilized by perfectionism, or thinking things through to the point of analysis paralysis. So check in with yourself here. Where are you seeing yourself in this? And let's go even deeper with it. How often? For example, are you a daily, weekly, or monthly procrastinator? Are you a daily, weekly, or monthly avoider? Are you having problems with following through? How often? How do you see that the fear domino effect is impacting you and having its way with you? Looking at this and being totally honest takes a lot of bravery. So will pride and fear stop you from lasering in on the true impact of the fear domino effect in your life? Don't let it. Will you take a laissez-faire attitude and tell yourself that this is something that applies to other people, but not to you? Don't allow ego and fear to prevent you from seeing the ways that the fear domino effect is playing out in your life. So that's the essential first step. If you are determined to be bigger and to serve bigger and to be braver and to be part of that exceptional 5% who go beyond fear and reach a new level in your life, both personally and professionally, then really stay with me here. All of these responses, procrastination, avoidance, perfectionism, analysis paralysis, they are all forms of fear's resistance, and they are also the breeding ground of feelings like frustration, anger, anxiety, loneliness, feeling victimized, feeling stuck, a scarcity mentality, or being envious of other people. Again, check in. Where do you see yourself in this? And the real kicker is that the fear domino effect, it works both ways. So fear leads to inaction, which leads to feeling crummy. And feeling crummy leads to inaction, which leads to more cause for fear. And this, not just the fear itself, but the manifestation of it, the behavioral pieces of the fear domino effect. Ultimately, this is what is marching your dreams closer and closer to the cemetery. Your life is finite, but your legacy can create a ripple effect that survives long beyond however many years you're here on this earth. Here's some really good news. There is an alternative to the fear domino effect, and I'm going to now share with you a proven process to help you successfully be of the 5%. So, the key is to break pattern, right? To break pattern in your awareness, in your thinking, in your behavior. So, looking at the fears that you wrote down, now we're going to build on the application of this information. So I'm going to introduce you now to a proven 3-step process. It's the Freedom from Fauxbias process. That is an adaptation of a psychological process that's known as flooding. So the flooding process is one proven and powerful way to break pattern and to successfully stretch beyond what fear would have you do. So I'm sharing it with you so that you can apply it as a tool to use when you need it, to go beyond where fear would have you go. Cool. So done in full, I stress that, in full, this process is a foolproof way to stretch beyond your fears and take action on even your most daring goals and dreams. Now, before we dive into the specifics of the 3-step Freedom from Fauxbias process, here's the synopsis of the theory behind the therapeutic process that's known as flooding. So, flooding is also known as exposure therapy. It is a behavioral therapy treatment for phobias and phobias. So with a solid base in behavioral research, okay, it's got a solid base. So the underlining theory is that a phobia is a learned fear and can therefore be unlearned through exposure to the thing that you fear. So humans are born with only two innate fears, the fear of falling and fear of loud noises. So all other fears fall into this category of learned fears. One last key to understand about flooding is that exposure can be real or it can be imagined. So in other words, if you're afraid of snakes, you could, for example, expose yourself to snakes by either being physically in a room with snakes or by imagining yourself in a room with snakes. Your brain doesn't know the difference between a real or an imagined event. So exposure in this case can be real or it can be imagined. Now, a quick personal example of this. Years before I formally knew about flooding as a behavioral therapy approach, I was a success story of it. I used to be so afraid of flying. I would grip the arms of the chair, and if the person next to me would let me, their arm or hand or leg, the entire flight. But I also love travel, which, as I'm sure you can imagine, posed a bit of a dilemma, right? So in college, I decided I wanted to study abroad in Australia. One leg of the flight was 17 hours. So rather than let fear prevent me from traveling to Australia, I got on the plane despite my fear. Then what happened was the stimulus, flying, was present for longer than I could sustain my fear response. So I literally ran out of fuel to stay afraid. Flying to Australia quite literally served as the cure for my phobia of flying. Now, to be clear, the goal is not to eliminate fear. The goal is to be braver and bigger than fear, to reach a place where fear doesn't undermine or sabotage action. Really want to stress that. Brave people are not without fear. Think about it. If they were, what in the world would they need bravery for? So fear can be managed and it can be minimized, but it is not likely to disappear altogether. So rather than trying to eliminate it, consider that fear is your friend in the sense that it is inviting you to step into being a bolder, braver, more expansive version of yourself, even if only just a teensy tiny little bit. Managing fear is profoundly empowering, and it is also a lifelong practice. So here it is. Here is the Create Your Life Freedom from Phobias process. Step 1, which hopefully you've already begun here, is to get specific about your fear. So rather than deny or ignore fear, this step is about getting specific and letting fear have a voice. So be really honest with yourself. First, identify a stuck spot or area of your life where you're noticing inaction, procrastination, or slow progress. This step is about being really honest with yourself. Maybe more honest than you have ever been before. Because before you can stretch beyond fear, you must know what it is. So ask yourself this: what is it that I'm afraid of in really specific terms? What are you afraid will happen if you go for it? If you do the thing you're afraid to do? Get really specific. Until you bring your awareness to what you are afraid of, that vague yet immobilizing fear will be in your driver's seat. But by naming your fear, you reconnect to your power because now you see what's in your way. So in this step, it's as if you're saying, I see you, fear. And oh, by the way, you are on notice. So finding the vocabulary to name your fear is a courageous step all its own. And this is step one. So to do this, get out a pen and paper, and as much as you can, be the curious observer of your fears. So let fear speak up. Let fear have the microphone. Your job is to take dictation, letting fear talk, transcribing what fear has to say. Ask fear, what is the worst case scenario? And write out what it says. And anytime you reach a moment of pause, ask fear, and then what might happen? Not what do you feel, but what might happen. Do this until fear has literally just it's run out of things to say, okay? Now, while this might seem like an enormous undertaking, and of course it takes as long as it takes, I would honestly be surprised if you spent more than 30 minutes on this. Step number 2, expose your fear. So when you're done writing, read it out loud without interruption, ideally to someone that you trust. Instruct the listener to ask only this: are you ready to take action despite your fears? Tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And this is really important. If your answer is anything but a full-fledged yes, then read it again, the whole thing, and again, as many times as it takes, each time answering the question, are you ready to take action despite your fears? Now there's a quote I love. It is by Fritz Perls. He's a German-born psychiatrist and psychotherapist born in the 1800s. And he said, fear is excitement without the breath. Fear is excitement without the breath. Now, I absolutely love thinking about fear in this way, with fear and excitement on a continuum. So two sides of the same energy. In this light, fear is evidence that you are right on the cusp of excitement. And the difference in how you experience that excitement is whether or not you breathe into it. So take a deep breath now with this in mind. Okay, let's move on to step 3. So remember I said you need to break pattern? Well, this is the biggest hurdle. Breaking a fear-based pattern is not easy. Here's what I mean. I've just given you a very powerful tool. The more you use this, the better off you're going to be. But the kicker is, from a behavioral modification standpoint, the likelihood is that you won't use it and you won't apply it. Why? Well, the data is clear. People don't reliably take action. It is far more likely that you will go right back to doing what you're familiar with, doing what's well practiced in your life. doing what your friends and family expect from you based on the past. If I could keep you fully engaged and if I could personally coach you through applying this every day for the next 30, 60, 90 days, you would be acting and thinking completely differently. The problem is that even after hearing this information, once you move on to whatever you're going to do next, that you're going to go back to the same old, same old. This is why it's so important to have support. Otherwise, you will likely go right back to your default ways. And that's why step 3 is get support. In order for now to be your someday, it is imperative to have the right support. We all need support. That too is universal. Fear will always be playing this game with you to try to slow you down, to keep you doing what you have always done. Having the accountability and support to constantly be managing this and constantly taking action despite what fear would have you do. This is the secret sauce. Without this kind of fierce, no-nonsense, ongoing support, fear is going to have its way with you. Fear will win. We all have our Lone Ranger tendencies, but the right support truly is the secret sauce. The antidote to fear is having the right support. So I'm talking about the kind of support that sees you as capable and doesn't buy into the BS fear-based stories, no matter how convincing they might sound. So when it comes to where you've been playing small, whether it's not making that phone call, or maybe it's not getting out into the dating world, or maybe it's not making the leap to start or grow your dream business. Or perhaps it's saying maybe next year to that trip that you said that about last year. And maybe the year before too. Or whatever it is for you. Whatever the dream is that is dying within you, longing to be expressed, this process done all the way through can breathe new life back into your dreams and your biggest, boldest version of you, serving and creating the impact and the legacy that is yours to create. So how long has the domino effect been playing out in your life? How long have you been saying later? How will you feel if in 6 months or 1 year from now, you're still saying later? Fear is so tricky, so sneaky. As you begin to really apply this information and this strategy, you may discover that there's a bit of a paradox effect at first, and I want to give you a heads up about that. The paradox is that the more bold and brave you get, the louder fear gets. That as soon as you start making decisions and doing new things, you can guarantee fear is going to get rowdy. The braver you get, the louder fear will get. The voice of fear will echo for a time. Making the decision to stay with it and set yourself up for support is what is ultimately going to help you have the breakthroughs and get the results that you are wanting and that I want for you. It all comes back to taking empowered, brave action now, not later. So once you've determined that yes, you are indeed ready to take action despite fear, Then identify one or two clear, challenging but doable next steps that you will take to move in the direction of what you are looking to create. And of course, reach out anytime if you need support. All right. I don't want this to be a monologue. I want it to be a dialogue. So I'm going to ask you to reach out, to reply, to comment. Let me know what spoke to you here. What did you take away from watching and listening? Any new awarenesses that you've gained about yourself? And what action are you taking as a result? I would love to hear from you. So until next time, onward and upward, and I bid you farewell for now.